Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and to the start of a new week here. In today's video, we're going to cover how Bitcoin's tracking along now that we've seen price sell off to about 114,000. Then we're going to jump into the XRP price chart, touch on what we see playing out here for XRP now that we are down below $2.90 for XRP, and finally back into our area of interest here. And then we're also going to touch on the stock market, look at things from a higher time frame perspective, have a look at how we are continuing to move up across the stock market and now seeing the Russell 2000 also break out and set new all-time highs. Then we're going to jump in, have a look at Ethereum, draw some examples from what we've previously discussed on the channel, and then have a look at some of our select altcoins that are performing and holding up the best during this correction. So lots to cover in today's video, guys. Let's jump into it. Okay guys, so firstly with Bitcoin, we have seen price sell off to about 114,000. Last week in Thursday's video, we discussed if price was to continue to follow the 2021 fractal that we would see these highs up here get swept before then seeing price move down. And then if we have a look at how price has played out today, we can see that that has played out perfectly. And on Friday, we did see price sweep these highs up here, which was the highs that were set back on the 23rd of August. And now since then, we have started to see price move down. And we are still looking for price to fall down to as low as about $112,000, which is not only the CME gap and not only where this fractal has us landing, but a major support level here for Bitcoin, as we've seen Bitcoin find support over here on the left side at 112,000 once before it then deviated below this area in which we have now reclaimed. So if we can see Bitcoin find support here, like we've seen in the past, like we can see on our fractal here, and to fill the CME gap at $112,000, this would be quite bullish. So as far as the plan is here for Bitcoin, still just looking for it to hold down at these levels and then move higher, which means that hopefully by the end of this week, we can see Bitcoin come down to 112, put in a bit of a bottoming structure and then start to reverse out of here. And then moving into October, we can see new all-time highs set here for Bitcoin. Now moving over to XRP, you can see that price has been tracking along to our fractal here, which again is from the same time period in 2021 where we have the Bitcoin fractal pulled from. However, the only thing that's playing out a little bit different here, which is actually quite good, is things are happening faster. So we can see that when these lows came in here for XRP, these lows ended up coming in down here and then price rallied higher than it did in the fractal. However, structurally, the same thing, what we were looking for, as you can see in the fractal where it tops out here, it ends up coming back to these highs before then selling off in an ABC style correction. And so far we have done that again, except this thing is happening a lot faster. The sell-offs are faster, and now roughly we are about at this stage in the fractal. So looking for XRP to bottom here soon. The lowest I could see XRP going is down here at the lows at about $2.80. However, this area here for XRP is where I'll be looking to add to a lot of my trading positions. And so far, I do believe we are in something like this for XRP. And over the coming days, we'll be looking for XRP to actually put in a bit of a bottom here. We want to see structure develop a little bit more before we scale in, but these are the levels that I am looking for. So XRP has officially re-entered my area of interest as well, which is essentially what we discussed in last week's video at about the 8-minute and 30 mark, where we did say XRP would push a little bit higher before then rolling over and coming in for that bottom around the $2.90 area, which you can see that we are at now. Now, before we jump into more of the altcoins and some of the trades we have going on here, I just want to have a look at things from a higher time frame perspective across macro markets as well. And as you can see, the stock market continues to push higher. The S&P is just setting new all-time highs day after day here. The Dow Jones has continued to push higher here, also setting new all-time highs, and so has the Nasdaq. So all the major indexes here in the stock market are continuing to push higher, which means at some point we should see Bitcoin catch up. Most importantly here, we have seen the Russell 2000 actually come up and set a new all-time high last Friday. And if we can see the Russell hold above these levels and continue to move higher, it's most likely that we'll see confluence between the Russell and the altcoin market, like we can see here on Total 2, which is the altcoin market. We can see that Total 2 ended up coming out, poking above that previous all-time high that it had set back from 2021. And now that we are back at these levels for the altcoin market, the big question is, will we continue to follow the Russell 2000? Which we can see if we overlay the Russell here in blue over the altcoin market. These two act very similar, and oftentimes what we see is the Russell move first before we can see the altcoin market actually catch up, like we've seen back here in 2023 where the Russell moved out first and then the altcoin market caught a bid, or like we've seen here in June and July of 2024 where the Russell broke out first before we then seen the altcoin market catch up straight back to these levels. And like we're seeing now, the Russell has just taken out its previous all-time high, is sitting above those levels, and now we are just waiting for the altcoin market to perform similarly. Now moving back to some altcoins here, we can see that Ethereum has made it back down to the lows of these range, which we did discuss 2 weeks ago, that we were looking for Ethereum to move to these levels, which is why we scaled out of our trade. And what we discussed was that this move up here these highs would eventually get breached, and then we should see Ethereum pull back in some ABC-like fashion, similar to the way that Bitcoin reacted back in 2023, when it ended up putting in very similar structures to the way that Ethereum is playing out right now, where we were looking for this high to get swept, that ABC correction, back down to these lows here, and then Bitcoin ended up turning around from these levels and moving back to the highs, which is most likely what I think will happen for Ethereum here. Once we do put in some kind of bottom, we should see ETH shoot up higher. And even when we look at this structure, you can see that price basically held at these levels with one deviation here for Bitcoin, and the same thing ended up playing out on Ethereum, where price basically held at these levels with that one deviation right there on Ethereum, and now we are seeing things play out structurally similar to the way Bitcoin played out in 2023 before it did move higher, and I think ETH will follow. Same with XRP here, because higher time frame perspective is still that we should see XRP shoot back and set a new all-time high in the coming weeks. And right now what we're waiting for is these lows to develop, just like what we're waiting for here on Bitcoin. Whether we end up coming down to this $112,000 region or holding around here at $114,000, which is a logical level to bounce from, I think we'll definitely find out this week on how price wants to react. A lot of the altcoin market, like XRP and Ethereum, do look like they are pretty close to putting in their lows here and are definitely in the areas of interest that I'm looking for. Now moving over to Solana, we can see that it's been holding up pretty well here. We did discuss the $225 price level last week, where we will be looking to add to our Solana positions, which does sit at around these levels here. So moving forward, we are looking for Solana to bleed off a little bit more, which I don't think is too unreasonable considering how well it's performed over the last month. And that if we can see price get back to 225, at the same time we can see Bitcoin get to about 112, I will be looking to add to my Solana positions. And another coin that we're tracking pretty closely here is Dogecoin, which is definitely back into our area of interest, but just like we discussed last week, we were looking for that 24-cent range before we add up on our Dogecoin positions, which lines us up with these lows down in here. So we're looking for Dogecoin to move a little bit lower. However, it definitely is back in that area of interest where I'll be looking to add to my trading positions, especially if we can see on lower time frames structurally some kind of low end up getting formed here. And if that low ends up holding for Dogecoin here, we can actually see price move higher. My next price targets for Dogecoin are sitting at around that 40-cent US mark. However, it's just a matter of waiting for price to develop structurally down here at the lows before I do think we see a reversal and price move to the upside. So all in all, across the market, guys, everything looks pretty good. It's just a matter of waiting for this bottoming process to happen. Will Bitcoin end up holding here at 114, or will we see it spill over to about $112,000 before it can then bounce? I think we're going to find out this week, and I also think that there's only a couple days left in this correction before we should see price move higher. But for a lot of the altcoins, I do think they are pretty close to putting in their lows here, especially here on XRP and especially on Ethereum, which is right back in this zone. So definitely exciting times ahead. It's good to see that the stock market is leading the way and that eventually crypto will catch up. And from a higher time frame perspective, this short-term price action doesn't really matter. In the coming weeks or so, we will be much higher. But again, it is just a matter of being patient, sniping our entries here, and then holding on tight as we move into the most exciting stage of the market. So I'll keep today's video pretty short for you guys. Just wanted to update on how I'm seeing things play out. The sell-off is acting accordingly like we discussed last week, and we did top out at the level that we discussed last week for Bitcoin and the rest of the market. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed today's update video, feel free to leave a like down below. If you're new here, please subscribe, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop them down below in the comment section. I'll see you guys in the next one.